Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic, and good morning, Asgard. Welcome back to the Good Morning Asgard podcast, where today we're going to talk about the box office projections for a few films coming out over the next month or two, and also just our general box office movie discussion talk. Before we go further, though, please make sure to smash that like button and smash the rumble button as well. We're not live on Odyssey this morning because Odyssey has been having some technical issues. They've been updating the servers, I think, and so therefore we are not live over there, but we are live once again on Kick today. So for anyone that likes that platform, that is available to you. Trying to get more wholesome content featured over there. But welcome everyone to episode 48 of the Welcome to Asgard Summer podcast. And let's go ahead and say hello to the people who are hanging out with us today. First off, we got McRib Prime in the chat. Thank you very much for being here. He goes on to say that Warner Brothers stock continues to fall and investors are reducing their investments. Not a great time for Warner Brothers executives today. Glorious. Enjoy the stream, all father. Catch it later. Well, McRib Prime, thank you very much for the comment. And thank you for supporting the stream. And yeah, smash that like button, please, before you head out. And yeah, it is just interesting. It's fascinating to see exactly what is going on currently with Warner Brothers because they are in a very, 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 very bad spot. And I know that a lot of times the intention that we tend to have when it comes to box office, when it comes to studios, tends to be on Disney. And there's a good reason for that. You look at a film like Elemental. That movie is set to lose probably close to $150+ million at the box office, being one of the biggest box office bombs in Disney Pixar's history. In fact, I was looking through the ticket sales and I was looking through the data, and you actually have to go all the way back to the pandemic-affected film in Onward to get a bigger box office bomb. That film actually ended up losing well over $200 million, but that had an entire pandemic, right? That film had only one weekend, and that weekend was not even that strong because there was already a lot of speculation about what was about to happen as far as theaters and businesses and all the other stuff that was happening. So at least there's, somewhat of a valid excuse. I think that we could definitely look at that movie and say that it didn't really seem to have that special it factor that a lot of other Disney Pixar films have had in the past, but we could at the very least say, and Disney could at the very least say, well, the pandemic had just started. Now they don't have that excuse anymore, all right? So you're looking now at Elemental as being one of their biggest box office bombs. Now, some people might ask the question, okay, but what about the box office for a film like Strange World, right? Where does this film, kind of match up against that? Well, one of the interesting things about the comparison between Elemental and Strange World is that, yes, Strange World's box office, the total box office, is by far one of the lowest, on record. The difference, though, is that the box office budget for the film was not as high as Elemental's. And so, therefore, you're going to see that both of those movies are going to be pretty much in the same category in certain ways. Again, they're not going to be exactly the same, but they are going to be very, very similar. It's also important to remember and to reference the fact that when you look at a film like Strange World, that is a Disney Animations production and not a Disney Pixar production. So that's the reason why it was not in my initial charting when we were going over the potential opening weekend and then after the opening weekend numbers for Elemental. The reason why Strange World was not there is because it is a Disney animated studios. It gets confusing since Disney owns Pixar, right? There was a time when Pixar was its own company and they were doing a lot of collaborations with one another, but then Disney, of course, buys up Pixar, as that's what Disney does. They buy up a lot of companies and then kind of just drive them into the ground. But that's also another comparison and another reason, right? I think that Pixar in general does have a bit of a factor to it that is, I think, something that has still some staying power. Obviously, it's lost quite a bit. It's lost a lot of that staying power. It's lost a lot of that trust that people had in it, right? People used to be able to say, oh, it's a new Disney Pixar film. I've got to go see that. This is going to be great, right? They have a history of having just consistently good movies. That's no longer the case. And where does this all really date back to? And remember, I've been talking about this for a while, and some people downplay it. Some people think that I overstate it, but I think that it is still an important factor nonetheless. And that is, I go back to last year. I go back to Lightyear from last year. That is a movie that on paper should have been a massive hit, should have been a massive success. But this is something that I actually forgot about, just how badly that movie did. That movie only only made around $218 million worldwide. Now, this is again using the adjusted for inflation calculator over on thenumbers.com. I'll go ahead and actually pull that up now, just to have it as a frame of reference. But yeah, I mean, so Warner Brothers, as McRib Prime was saying, right, they're doing really, really bad. There's no doubt about that. Disney is doing terrible, but hey, we also have to remember, and we're going to talk today about The Flash and how Warner Brothers is also doing pretty terrible. But even just going into the actuals, right, the 218, so they don't really adjust that number when you look at the numbers.com. And again, it's only about a year apart, and so they're not going to account for that, but there has indeed been inflation even over the last year. But if you look at the number, right, Lightyear made $218 million worldwide. Elemental is at 121 right now. And what's most fascinating is this 218 is probably not going to get reached by Elemental. It may not even be close. And we can kind of start to speculate on that, because if you look at these daily comparisons, yes, Elemental starts to beat out Lightyear's numbers when you get to the second Friday, Saturday, but it's really not all by that much. I mean, you're talking about maybe an extra $100,000, and inflation would easily account for that, meaning that you're seeing for these comparisons really a movie that's doing not nearly as well opening weekend as Lightyear, and then maybe doing about as well. And we all know Lightyear's drop-off was pretty massive, and its overall box office was just downright abysmal. Now, again, we're not getting Strange World numbers, but still, for a film that costs an extra $70 million versus what Strange World cost, that is really, really bad. That is really, really abysmal. But again, we'll dive further into those numbers in a little bit. Kenoath, what's going? Kenoath? Good day. What's going on? Nick Braun, good morning to you. Thank you very much for being here. Yes, indeed, it is a beautiful morning. Today is the feast of Saints John and Paul, who were martyrs of the church. Just another red shirt who is a member on the channel. Hail to you. Thank you very much for joining this morning. Thanatos Felicitas, what is going on? Where you been? Missed you, man. Long time no see. Indeed, it has been a long time. But seriously, thank y'all for understanding why we were. If you hear any rumbling, by the way, it's because we have a crew that comes by to help clean up around the house a little bit, something that my wife is very much passionate about. She doesn't like having a lot of dust around it. And since I'm not as consistent with vacuuming, etc., that's kind of her special little thing that she gets to have. But anyway, so if you hear any of that, that's the reason why. But yeah, I thank y'all for understanding. I was over in St. Louis this past weekend going to my wife's family reunion. They have it every single year, every single summer. One of the things that I love about it most is that there is a competition every single year, and it's cornhole. I don't know if anyone's ever played cornhole before, but it's actually a lot of fun. It's a game where you don't have to really be fit. You don't have to have a lot of skill necessarily. I mean, it does require some. You got to be able to get one of these, bean bags things essentially right onto a board, maybe even get it into the hole itself. But it's a lot of fun, and it's great, especially because there's a wide range of ages that actually will play it. So you've got people like me and others who are like in their 20s and 30s, but then you've also got those in their 40s and 50s, and then there's some playing where they're in their got to be 60s or 70s, and they can still play because, again, it doesn't require too much as far as physical exertion, but it's a lot of fun. And it's a long drive though, especially with Baby Thor. Baby Thor did pretty well in the drive back versus the drive there. But overall, not too shabby. Let's see. We got the R in the chat. What's going on? The R is working. Thank you very much for joining while working, and hopefully listening to this will keep you intrigued, keep you possibly entertained. That would be nice. Hopefully that is the case. If not, I apologize, but thank you for being here, good sir. Colin K, what is going on? We got Ahmed? Mohammed? I always forget how to pronounce the name. Mohammed. What's going on? Let's see. Think Noodles. What's going on? And Mohammed says Barbie and Oppenheimer will fail. Well, we'll have to wait and see on Oppenheimer, and also even on Barbie. Now, again, personally, I don't think that they're going to do very well. Again, Oppenheimer, some people might think, but it's Christopher Nolan. Yes, but Christopher Nolan is not a guaranteed box office magnet, right? He is not a person that's guaranteed to bring in a ton of money. And so we're going to look into what the overall projections are for his movie and also for Barbie. And again, there's a couple of things and a couple of reasons as to why I personally think Barbie is not going to be as big as it could be. And I think ultimately it's going to be word of mouth. But we have to wait for the movie itself to actually come out before we can even say one way or the other. K-Man, what's going on? Welcome back. Brightburn, thank you very much for tagging. And again, if you have a comment or question, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're watching on Rumble or Kick, if you have a comment, just put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. It lets me know that you're trying to get my attention, and it lets me know that you have a question that you want to ask. It's my way of being able to decipher between people just commenting, people having conversations with each other. It's kind of like a code word, right? So you don't have to donate or super chat to get your comment read or question read or anything like that. I don't try to pin people in that, especially since we have smaller volume typically here. But I do ask that you just put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment, just like what Brightburn85 did. And of course, if you are a member on the channel, then that is the one exception to where you do not have to worry about that. I also like to say hello to the people as they come in too. So let's see. Brightburn85 though says, can we talk about the post-credit scene in The Flash? I mean, does anyone here really care about spoilers for a film they're probably not going to see? Well, here's the thing, Brightburn. There's really nothing to spoil. I mean, ultimately, there is nothing really to spoil when it comes to the post-credit scene in The Flash because nothing happens. And I think I mentioned this in my review. I think that the post-credit scene is honestly a slap in the face to the fans, a slap in the face to those who are actively going out of their way to go and see the movie. And it's because you are putting a scene that you could have easily put as your mid-credits scene, but instead you're going to make people wait. And again, I know that you can easily look up online beforehand what the credit scene is, information about it, and I understand that, but think about this from a fan's perspective, right? Let's say that you are still one of the very few, and based on the numbers, there are not a lot, very few fans left that still care about the DCEU, that still care about this version of The Flash, that you maybe are a big fan of Michael Keaton's Batman or whatever it might be, right? Let's say that you are a fan. You typically want to go in as blind as you possibly can. Maybe you've seen some trailers, maybe you haven't, but you just, again, want to be able to go in and experience it. So you're not going to go in and look up and see what happens in the post-credit scene. You're just going to look up and say, hey, maybe you'll look this up, right? Sometimes people don't even get it on their phones. They're like, I'm just going to wait and see whatever happens. I'm the person. I know I'm the kind of person, no matter what I'm seeing, whether I want to see it or not, right? Whether I'm a fan of what I'm watching or not, I will always look up and say, look up online, are there any post-credit sequences? Right? Because then I want to know, okay, is it worth me waiting until the end credits just to have something to watch, or is there nothing, right? And so I think that if you're either one of those persons, someone who's just going to wait no matter what, or you're someone that's going to look up and see if there is a scene, when that's what you get, and again, it's not really a spoiler at all because nothing happens, when all you get is a conversation between a drunk Aquaman and Barry Allen, right? That's all that you really have. And then just talking to each other. And you could argue Barry Allen's trying to tell him a little bit about the fact that he went back in time and, kind of just basic, again, very basic broad strokes as far as the actual plot of the movie is that you've just watched. It's not adding anything new. It's not setting anything up other than, oh yeah, don't forget there's an Aquaman movie still coming out. Like that's the only real logical explanation as to why that is the scene they decided to put in, because it's not funny, right? Usually there's two reasons to have a post-credit scene. One, to set up for something else, or two, to have something really funny, right? Hey, you've waited through the credits, now you get to have a little bit of an extra funny scene, but you didn't get any of that. You did not get any of that in this post-credit sequence for The Flash. Instead, it was this throwaway scene that did nothing for the story, that wasn't even funny, and it ended up feeling like they just shot it on a random day and said, oh, we need to put something at the end credits. Hey, y'all two are here today. Why don't y'all just, pretend like you're having a conversation? Hey, wouldn't it be kind of funny if you acted drunk, Jason Momoa? Wouldn't that be hilarious? No. I mean, that's why I think it was a slap in the face, because it wasted the time of anyone who was waiting, who honestly thought they might be getting something. I mean, you could have ended it with just Michael Keaton. Like, you could have just had outtakes of Michael Keaton's performance. And I'm confident that would have been, at the very least, entertaining and possibly even funny. You have to know there have to have been outtakes. There have to have been some funny sequences that happen with Michael Keaton on set, or really with almost any of the actors on set. Hell, you could have even had a scene with Michael Keaton and and Barry Allen's Flash, right? You could have had that with Ezra Miller. You could have had a scene where Ezra Miller is actually acting human, Now, that may not have been enough for a lot of people. I know for me, it would definitely not have changed my view that he's got a lot of things that he's been accused of, and I think it needs to be litigated. I think it needs to be investigated. But at the end of the day, you could have at least done that. You could have at least humanized him in that way. But no, instead they just throw in this throwaway scene that does nothing and means nothing in the long run. So, all right, I'll get to the rest of the comments in just a second, but let's go ahead and dive into kind of the meat and potatoes of today's stream, which is talking here about some of the box office projections that we have going on. So as I mentioned in the title, talking here about the projections for Barbie, for Oppenheimer, and also, of course, for Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1. Still too long of a title. So these are coming from Box Office Pro. As that caveat I always like to give with Box Office Pro, the numbers that we get from here can be reliable from time to time. They're usually a good metric, right, as far as getting the general feel. Okay, what is the industry feeling? What are some of the social media metrics indicating? And they're starting to get a little bit better in their projections, meaning they're tending to, I think, undersell or lower their expectations on films. Like they had been kind of over projecting this early on, because keep in mind, we still got, for when it comes to Indiana Jones, we're going to get an update on this number, and this number is going to drop. And in fact, I believe that you've already seen other sites talking about, in fact, I think even the studio itself has come out to say they think the film's going to make somewhere between 50 and 55 million, maybe $60 million opening weekend. So we're already seeing that happen on other sites and from other places. But this is what Box Office Pro is talking about, and that's why we're focusing more on films that still have a little ways to go versus a film like Indiana Jones, where there will be an update to this coming out of Deadline, coming out of Hollywood Reporter, and all these other, media outlets. And but just to kind of give a bit of a heads up, so I figured I'd just mention that one. It was interesting though, and I've mentioned this previously, is that it's trending down, right? So even though Box Office Pro's numbers are not up to date, again, this was last updated about a few days ago, I think, and they are obviously going to have different numbers coming in. The fact that it's trending downward is a really, really bad sign. I mean, when your opening weekend is already going towards the 60s on the low end, I would not be surprised to see their projections be roughly, if not close to The Flash, maybe slightly higher than The Flash would be their projections. Personally, I can't see the film making that much more than The Flash. The Flash, the 3-day weekend for The Flash was around $55 million. I suspect Indiana Jones, you might see it do a little bit better, because if I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say, all right, I think there might be a few extra people out there that care about Indiana Jones versus those that care about The Flash. If that makes any sense, right, in the modern world, it just would make sense. Like, I think that there are definitely some older people too who, hey, I haven't seen an Indiana Jones film since Temple of Doom, because there haven't been any Indiana Jones films since Temple of Doom, because we don't count that other one that had alien skulls and stuff like that, right? So you might have those people out there in larger numbers. So we'll wait and see, but it is trending downward, and that is definitely a bad sign. What'll be interesting for me too is Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. It's a terrible name, though kudos to Universal, because the shade that they're throwing, it's very, very subtle, or maybe not so subtle if you're paying attention, but if you've seen the trailer for this movie, you've noticed that it's Krakens versus mermaids. Guess who the lead mermaid is? Basically, it's Ariel. It's classic 90s Ariel. It's white girl, red hair, who happens to be a mermaid. I just was like, okay, is that a shot at Disney? Is that a shot at something else? I don't know, but I kind of appreciate it. I kind of appreciate those tactics. And hey, you know what? Disney's in a lot of financial trouble, so it honestly wouldn't surprise me if Disney tried to file a lawsuit against Universal for quote unquote copyright infringement. Because now, actually, you know what? I kind of hope they do, because then Disney would have to in open court say, no, but this is Ariel. You see how that would be a problem for them, because then they would have to admit, oh yeah, Ariel is supposed to be a light-skinned redhead. Oh, wait a minute. So you know what? Yeah, please go ahead. And you know what? If that happens because of Universal's choice here, kudos to them. Maybe that's just me, fantasy booking that, but I think that would be quite entertaining. But this movie, interestingly enough, I believe it was Valiant Renegade. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was him. He had mentioned saying that because Elemental came in so low, right? Because Elemental did so poorly, that Universal was actually looking to bump up some of the marketing for the movie, because the marketing hasn't been too strong for this film, and maybe trying to take advantage of the fact that you do have a much lower and a much smaller release in Elemental. Now, we do like to do things here live on the channel. So let me go ahead and see if I can actually pull up some of the information that we would need to kind of speculate. So right now there has not been a budget that has been reported yet. I know Wikipedia is not a great source, but in general, they tend to be some of the quickest as far as getting information, getting articles, collecting articles together that tend to have that type of information in there. But based on the fact that this is a Universal film, remember when you look at a movie like the Super Mario Brothers film coming from Universal, right? That did not come from DreamWorks, that came from Illumination, but still under that banner. It wouldn't surprise me if Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, terrible name, cost probably around $100 million or less. Right? That seems to be kind of the standard for what they spend on these kinds of movies. Maybe DreamWorks is a little bit higher. I don't have a frame of reference for, I don't have a rich history and knowledge of history as far as their overall budgets are concerned, but 100 million would make sense, especially based on what we saw in the trailers. So this kind of opening would not be very good. So if their marketing campaign is indeed being increased, as some have reported, if that's able to have an impact, then hey, maybe you end up seeing this film do a little bit better, especially since it doesn't really have a lot of competition, because very different audiences are going to be going to see Dial of Destiny versus Teenage Kraken. So what I'm going to be most fascinated to see is, does this film have any capacity whatsoever to do better than what Elemental did, and who wins out in the end? Personally, it'd be awesome to see Ruby Gillman end up winning. Again, I haven't seen the movie. I don't know if the movie's any good or not. It definitely comes across as a film that could have some problems in it, but hey, you know what? Anything that brings Disney down, as you all know, Disney is not my favorite company, would be interesting to say the very least. You then also have coming out the week after that, Insidious: The Red Door, Joyride. I don't care about either of those films. I believe John Campea said that he loved Joyride. He thought it was great. I saw someone in the comment section mention John Campea, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, when John Campea says that he loves a film, especially when he gets early access to a screening, I immediately question it, and I immediately have doubts about it. I've seen the trailer for this, I think, one time, and immediately I was like, yeah, I have no interest in this. No interest in this whatsoever. But hey, maybe it'll find an audience. All right, now let's get into some of the films that we have a lot of people who are anticipating high things from. So first off, we have July 12th, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Whew, that is a mouthful. I don't know how I'm going to put that into my video titles once it does come out. Obviously, I think I'm going to shorten Mission Impossible to just MI, but oh my goodness. Naming schemes, people, naming schemes. So overall, you had Box Office Pro projecting, and this was about maybe 5 days ago or so, I believe. This was updated not too long ago, but they did not give any updates whatsoever to Dead Reckoning. All right, they had not given any updates to this number. So they did not think the film was going to make more or less. This could be for a couple reasons. It could be that they did not see any changes that would indicate any major changes in their overall projections, so it was maybe negligible. Or it could also be that they decided to not update this because things are very uncertain. Things are still very kind of hairy when it comes to the box office and the market. And so they could also just be holding off on updating this, right? So their initial estimate, though, had the film making between 65 and 80 million in its opening weekend, and then making a total of 250 to 320 million domestic by the end of its run. Now, that would overall not be a terrible number, but it would also not be a great number either, especially when you take into account that this movie is going to have cost quite a bit of money. In fact, a budget of $290 million. So this movie has to make quite a bit, well over $700+ million, if it has any hopes of being able to make its money back. So again, a very, very high break-even point. However, one of the positive elements is this was the early tracking, all right? Early tracking from Box Office Pro was 65 to 80. However, this was something that was mentioned. I think it was Steven. Shout out to Steven. I think he was the one that was mentioning this, that this article from Hollywood Reporter had broken back on the 22nd. And this talks about how Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning is sprinting towards the franchise best $90 million opening weekend. Cruise returns as Ethan Hunt in Paramount Skydance July tentpole, which opens 3 weeks from now. It goes on to say that you have the tracking for the franchise best of $90 million at the domestic box office in its first 5 days, a huge start for the July tentpole. Now, I'm going to go ahead and point that out right now to say, okay, that is, I'm very happy that we do this live, because now you're going to get my natural reaction to this, okay? Because initially, that headline makes it sound really good, right? $90 million versus what they're saying over here on Box Office Pro. Wait, that seems to be an increase. That seems to be overall, an overall growth. Here's the problem. This is accounting for the 3-day numbers. This is accounting for the 3-day opening. However, this article here, as it's just said, is tracking for the first 5 days. This movie is going to get a Wednesday release. So it's going to release on Wednesday, right? So it's going to get released earlier than what many films do. And so therefore it's going to have a long weekend. So if it's saying right now that the film is going to make $90 million over 5 days, that actually is not all that good. As it says right here, the $90 million projection includes a 3-day of $65 million. So again, kind of correcting what someone had said before. Someone had pushed, again, this article saying, hey, it's actually tracking a lot higher. It's actually not, according to this article. All right. According to what is being reported, the film is actually tracking about the same amount of money. In fact, even lower than what Box Office Pro. Now, Box Office Pro, at the very least, does put a range, and they do think that the film had a capacity to possibly do more. Now, what do I personally think is going to happen? All right. Personally, I think this film is going to come out and do a heck of a lot better than what they're saying. I know that there's been other box office channels that have also talked about that, but again, what am I basing that off of? I'm looking at the general sentiment related to this movie. All right. I'm looking and saying, okay, wait a minute. There's a lot of hype around this movie. There's a lot of people that are excited for this movie. Yes, of course, there's people that are not all that excited for it, but I've heard too many people tell me, and again, this is anecdotal evidence, that this is something that is, again, personal interaction, and as we all know, this does not guarantee anything. But I've again, been covering this for a very, very long time at this point. Again, coming on like 5 years, I've been talking about box office stuff, covering and following these numbers. And I can always get this general feel about whether or not there is momentum or not. And there seems to be a lot of momentum in the favor of this movie. All right. You've got a few factors going on here. First, this is going to be, in many people's eyes, kind of a follow-up to what we saw last year with Top Gun Maverick. Now, it's not that they think that it's in the same universe or that it's connected in any narrative way. It's just that in people's minds, they'll think, wait a minute, I remember last year going to see Top Gun Maverick, whether it was opening weekend or after everyone and their mother was saying this film was great and I need to go see it, going to see it multiple times, and it was awesome and it was great and everyone was correct. So you're going to have some of that sentiment already here. People are going to say, wait, an action film with crazy stunts featuring Tom Cruise? I'm starting to get the same feelings going on here as I did last year. All right, so I think that that is something that's going to be one of those factors. Another factor that I think is kind of leading towards why I think this film's opening weekend is going to be a little bit higher than what they are currently projecting is the fact that the social media presence of this film has been quite strong. They've done a very good job of releasing different clips, right? Not narrative clips, but just awesome behind the scenes. You, of course, early on had the really cool shot of Tom Cruise going off that cliff, right? Going off on the bike with the parachute. Really awesome. Even cooler, I think, and I think Bruce was actually finally able to watch this, and he said, thank you so much for showing this, for letting me know about this. Look up Dead Reckoning Part 1 traffic scene, because that to me is actually even more impressive than him jumping off a cliff. I know, it's like, wait, how can you be more impressive? How can traffic be more impressive than jumping off a cliff? Because if you think about a sequence that's being filmed, if you've got countless numbers of cars that are moving in sequence, think about all of those variables that are there. And now add into that Tom Cruise driving a couple of different cars, not only through the city streets of very, very narrow streets of, what is it? Is it Italy, or I forget exactly what country they're in, but still he's doing, these crazy turns, these crazy turnouts. I don't know the entire lingo of it, doing like donuts, things like that, but he's doing it also with another actress in the car, right? So he's not having a stunt person do that type of driving. And then also the actress that's with him is also in the car actually experiencing that too. And the way it's being shot, at one point he actually goes into, right, this giant circle of traffic. And it's like, wait a minute, that to me is even more impressive. Rome, thank you very much. Someone mentioned Rome. That to me is even more impressive because when it comes to the variables of jumping off a cliff, there's very few. Again, it's very, very high risk, of course, but the variables are not nearly as high. Whereas if you're going into, even if it's simulated traffic, if you're going into a countless number of cars and traffic, oh my goodness. Like that's just really impressive. So go ahead and look that clip up because it's really, really cool. And so that's the other factor that I think is going to have an impact is people are going to say, I want to go see a movie that's going to be fun. I want to go see a movie that's going to make me be on the edge of my seat. And again, going back to the first point I made, some people I think are going to connect this back in their minds to the experience that they had when they watched last year's Top Gun Maverick. So do I think that this film is going to be as high as Maverick? No. I do not think that that's going to happen. Maverick had, decades and decades of buildup, not to mention it had years of buildup because it got delayed so many times because of the pandemic. And I remember, and I mentioned this previously, it was my top most anticipated movie for like 3 years in a row because of the delays. And I know for a lot of people, they were excited. And the opening weekend for it was not amazing, right? It wasn't huge. It was the drops after, right? It was the people going to see it after the fact that made a lot of people really excited to go see it. So I think that some of that momentum might actually rub off on Dead Reckoning. It's not going to be the same. It's not going to be as high, but it could be there. Now, the last factor to talk about is the film going to be good? Now, this is something that I do not have the answer to. I have not seen the movie yet. I have not seen a lot of early reactions to this film from people that I trust. But if this movie ends up being good, if this film continues right now, basically you go from Mission Impossible 3 on and you have good movies, right? They're not amazing films necessarily. They're not the best films you've ever seen, but really solid films nonetheless. All right. And if you're a fan of the franchise, a fan of the storyline, a fan of the characters, or just a fan of Cruise doing crazy stuff, there's a lot of stuff to enjoy in those movies. And so because of that, there's very little for me to think that this movie's not going to be good, that this movie's not going to be fun. And if it's able to do that, if it's able to be good, well made, well crafted, with a good story to boot, you then have yourself, I think, a formula for not only a higher than expected opening weekend, mostly because of those first two factors that I mentioned, but if it's a good story and if it's able to hold people's attention, okay, now you're holding on to, okay, next weekend, the following weekend, having a very strong hold. Now, I know some people out there might be obsessed with premium format screens, saying, well, it's only going to have a week or so in premium format screens. Well, that's one of the reasons why you are having an early release on that Wednesday to get more show times in the IMAX screen. But remember, premium screens do not necessarily guarantee much of anything. You can look at many films. Look at, for instance, Elemental. Elemental had some features in premium format screens. The Flash has had features has had itself in premium format screens, and it hasn't made much of a difference, right? Those films are still giant flops. So this movie, though, again, it can definitely be helped by those premium format, higher priced ticket screens in its box office opening, it does not need those screens. All that it needs is good word of mouth. And right now, I speculate that the word of mouth on this film will probably end up being pretty good. That's what I personally think. Now I'll jump into Barbie and Oppenheimer after a break, going back into the chat to see what y'all got to say. But first off, I do have a super chat, so thank you very much, Rage Grifter, for a $2 super chat. Says, I still can't see Nefarious in Australia. I'm very sorry to hear that, man. I think that it is currently it is available on PVOD, so on iTunes you can rent it. So right now it's only available for rental. I've actually on social media a couple times kind of called them out and said, come on, man, like make it available to purchase on PVOD as well, because Lord knows I would buy it now. I've already seen the movie, so I'm not going to spend $20 on a rental, but I'll spend $20, maybe even $25 on PVOD. I've already pre-ordered 5 Blu-ray copies of the movie, so I'm invested in it. But I think that some people are still wary. Some people don't like the concept, even though one can easily explain why renting a movie at home for $20 still makes sense. Because if you think, okay, what is the average ticket price these days? $13. What do you get to do at home? You get to control it. You get to pause it. You get to have your own popcorn. You get to save a lot of money. And so therefore that experience, you can actually argue, is worth $20. However, personally, I know for me, I would much rather, when it comes to this movie, buy it outright to own it. And again, I'm against digital copies in general because I'm much more of a physical media guy, as if you could not tell from the shelf behind me. Yeah, so what I can guess, though, going back to your comment, the Rage Grifter, is I believe that it is right now country locked. And so hopefully they are able to extend out, whether it's the PVODs or whether you can pre-order it. I think Australia is Region A. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it is Region A. So be on the lookout, because once that film is released, it's still a little ways from it being released on physical media. I think it's not getting released until maybe September on physical media. But stay tuned to the channel, because I will have several copies that I'll be giving away. So stay tuned to that, because if it's Region A especially, then that Blu-ray will play for you. But anyway, thank you very much for that super chat. And I'm sorry that you don't have access to it. All right, going back into the chat, 1011, Think Noodle says, did you see the buy one, get one Fandango deal for The Flash? What are your thoughts? And has that ever been done for a blockbuster? It's really embarrassing for the movie. Yeah, I mean, I remember, I forgot whether it was you who commented on that under one of my videos or someone else did. I mean, those types of sales happen all the time. I mean, you see sales happen, especially in today's market, because The Flash is not the only movie that's been struggling to sell tickets. I mean, this has kind of been a problem for a lot of these, especially the big budget films. And it means a lot more for the big budget films because they cost so much and they have to make so much money back. But yeah, again, sometimes people like to kind of hold on to these different things that happen, whether it's the buy one, get one free sale, whether it's the fact that studios for all time have always had giveaways for movie tickets, right? Because they will give tickets to radio stations to raffle off, things like that. And then people will buy into the conspiracy of, oh yeah, it's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. It's like, look, any of that stuff is going to be accounted within their marketing budget because that is a way of marketing your movie. When you are spending money to buy, these types of tickets, right, where you are giving them away, that is because you're trying to get more people into the seats to be able to, hopefully, in your mind as a studio, you're hoping, will give more positive word of mouth versus negative. And you're obviously much more susceptible to give a positive reaction to something if you go for free versus a negative one. But the buy one, get one free thing, I think that's a non-story for me because that's not an uncommon thing. Bad news over on Rumble, what's going on? Welcome. Sebastian Tad say, have you read about Oliver Stone watching John Wick 4 and calling it disgusting? It's a perfect example of old man yelling at clouds. No, I have not seen that. I know Oliver Stone's been on Joe Rogan's podcast several times. I've never listened to his episodes, so I don't know if that's from an interview with him or something else like that. But it doesn't surprise me all that much. A lot of these older filmmakers, right, are not going to like it. If you want a great podcast, though, to listen to, Sebastian, kind of in the vein of John Wick, I listened to Chad Stahelski, who is the director of John Wick. He went on Joe Rogan's podcast a few weeks ago, and the conversation between him and Rogan is fantastic. It's great if you love the film. It's great if you love movies. It's great if you like behind-the-scenes discussions. It was riveting. I loved it. I listened to the entire, I think it's like 2.5 to 3 hour long conversation, and it's really, really good. So especially if you like or don't mind Joe Rogan, look up Joe Rogan episode with Chad Stahelski, the director of John Wick, and it's a really good discussion. Mutant Banhammer, welcome to the chat. Great Wuda, welcome to the chat. Sebastian Taxley, are you watching the YouTube channel Campia Exposed? It's hilarious. No, I'm not watching that one. However, I appreciate just the name Campia Exposed because yeah, that dude, he's been off the rails for a very, very long time, but the one that got a lot of attention over the last few weeks of him in his backyard yelling and screaming at his fans and calling them a bunch of istanphobes and basement dwellers. I was happy to see that one back because it's been a while since I heard him talk about us as basement dwellers in that capacity, especially when most of us don't even have basements, but that's kind of besides the point. That's great, though, that there is a channel that's going after him for that. Great Wuda says, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is a beautiful title. No, Great Wuda. It is a mouthful. Again, I think that Dead Reckoning is great. I really like that one a lot. It's when you put them all together. Rage Grifter, what's your opinion on the Sympathy for the Devil trailer? Haven't seen it. If it is a trailer about demons or possessions or anything like that, no thank you. But obviously I could see how that title could also be for something else. Maybe like a mafia film or something. Let's see. Brightburn85 says, at least X-Men Origins has a post-credit scene teasing Logan going to Japan. However, the post-credit Flash scene reminds me of Steve Rogers talking about patience being a virtue in Homecoming. Yeah, I mean, but I think when it came to Homecoming, there were two. There was a mid-credits and post-credit sequence, if I'm not mistaken. So at least you had that, right? You had one that did something and then another that was kind of a throwaway. When it comes to The Flash, all you had was the end credit scene and it was a throwaway. I mean, that is, to me, why it's so much more egregious for what The Flash did with its credit. Nick Braun says, I think if Flash would have been a commercial success, Ezra Miller's crimes would have been forgiven and forgotten by Hollywood. What do you think of his future prospects as an actor in Hollywood? Well, I think that's the biggest problem, though, is that good or bad, he seems to be protected. It seems like he is still getting a lot of protection. The fact that he was given a pass on doing basically any interviews whatsoever, not promoting his movie in any real capacity, only showing up to the premiere. And I don't remember a lot of videos coming out of people interviewing. Was anyone allowed to interview him even at the premiere? I don't think so. Maybe he was, but I haven't seen it make any rounds. So he's clearly getting protected. So something tells me that even though he has a lot of allegations against him, he's either, again, I like to try to say, and I like to try to think the best of people, even if it's not necessarily the case, but maybe he's got a lot of good friends in Hollywood. Maybe he's got issues that are similar to other people's issues that they would want to try to preserve and protect and help him, hopefully help him. Now, whether they're going to do that, I have some doubts, but that would be my guess, is that someone or a group of people even are protecting him. Let's see. Big Worm says, Hail, family is going to see a Friday night movie for the first time as a family for the new Mission Impossible. May do IMAX, but no free popcorn refills. We've been watching all Mission Impossibles to get ready. What do you mean no free popcorn refills? Are you saying that you're thinking of going to an actual dedicated like aquarium IMAX, like it's an IMAX specific screen? If not, go to like an AMC. There's a lot of AMCs that have the AMC Prime, which is the Dolby Vision. Dolby Vision is really good. Like it's really, really good. The sound's fantastic. The image quality is great. And then, of course, I do really like IMAX as well. But there's also AMCs and Regals that have those deals and have their own IMAX screens. Now, they're not nearly as big as like a dedicated IMAX screen, but they're pretty good. And then you do get the free popcorn refills. And if you go with the whole family, yeah, getting a large popcorn can be really big. Right? So anyway, could be a big money saver. Again, if you have a comment or question that you want me to read, put at Odin at the very beginning of your comment. Otherwise, I don't know who you're talking to because I lose track of everything. Just so the Red Shirt says, in what universe do Dial of Destiny and Dead Reckoning have comparable openings? Oh boy. I mean, again, based on the numbers that we're seeing right now, in this universe, in the Box Office Pro projections universe, because that is what we're basically seeing, right? 65 to 80 million 3-day opening for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, and then 68 to 95 million for Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny is what the 3-day opening projected for that film is. Now, again, there is one article out there, and I do have to issue a correction. Someone in the chat had mentioned this, I think last week, that the projections had changed to 90 million, but that is not true. The 90 million projection is a 5-day total, not a 3-day total. So you're really only saying that on the 2 extra days, it's going to make 5 million each day. And that's not necessarily terrible, but that still means a 65 to 80 million dollar opening for the 3-day overall. So it's going to be interesting to watch. Now, again, right now it seems to me momentum is definitely going against Dial of Destiny, whereas it's going towards and in favor of Dead Reckoning. So I suspect that Dead Reckoning will have a higher opening, but we'll wait and see. We, of course, will have to wait and see. Daddy Twofoot, what's going on? Henry K, welcome. Let's see. Nearsighted Cyclops, what's going on? Welcome. Let's see. Big Worm says, speaking of traffic, Extraction 2 was amazing. Behind the scenes of their car chase scenes is nuts. They're handing cameras back and forth between moving cars and speed blew my mind. Yeah, I really do appreciate it. Of all the things in Extraction 2 that I could say positively, really the only thing I can say positively about it is the kudos to the stunt team. Kudos to the stunt coordinators, right? All the behind the scenes people. I wasn't a big fan of it. I think Critical Drinker was a fan of it. I think he really liked it a lot. For me, I did not think the story was very good. I did not think that the acting was that great. Extraction 1 to me is a much better movie. I think that the connection, I mentioned this last time, that the connection between Chris Hemsworth's character and the teenage kid in that movie is just a really good story arc. It's a good story element, whereas this movie doesn't have that. And the one kid that is in the movie, the kid of the terrorist, is really annoying and just not really that compelling. So, I think that movie is kind of getting overrated. However, what's not overrated is the stunt team. The stunt team, phenomenal work on that movie. The stunt work is great in Extraction Part 2. Let's see. Frank G. Tag say, besides Flash and Elemental, what other movies this summer will be box office bombs? Indy 5, Oppenheimer, Barbie, Blue Beetle. Well, I think Indy 5 for sure. Indy 5 is absolutely going to be a box office bomb. You know, I don't even have to have the numbers in front of me to know that, because the numbers that I have seen are low enough, and the early reactions, even from the most friendly of audiences, right, and critics, has not been overwhelmingly positive. It tells me that it's going to have a lot of trouble. So yeah, it might have a better than expected opening weekend. I could see that happening, because there are certain factors. There are people that are going to look at this and say, well, this is going to be the last time that we see it as Indiana Jones. And that might matter to some people. It doesn't really matter to me, but it might matter to some. So we could see a higher than expected opening, but it's going to have a massive drop, and it's just I just can't see a world where it makes money. And we'll talk about Oppenheimer and Barbie in just a second after I get through a couple more comments. But I think that ultimately for both of those, Oppenheimer could go either way. I'm leaning towards it maybe not making money, but the marketing I think has actually been pretty compelling. The trailers have been very exciting, and I think that some people might be looking at this as a way to kind of recover from Tenet, because I know Tenet was not favored by a lot of people. I personally liked it, but I also went in knowing that the sound sucked, and so I was able to understand the vast majority of the dialogue. But if you went into that movie expecting a film that had really well done or had at least passable sound mixing, sound editing, then you would probably have struggled just as much as most people did in knowing what the heck was going on. I was definitely an exception to that. So maybe this is a time that he'll be able to bring some people back, because he does bring, there are a lot of hardcore Nolan fans. So he does have a standard base. The question is, will this film, maybe because of its subject matter, it might be able to branch out to bring in some normies, but we'll wait and see. And then for Barbie, I think personally Barbie will have a decent opening, and then I personally think it'll plummet second weekend, and that's based on the fact that if you look at the interviews that have been done about this movie, yes, it's based off of the source material of the doll, but there is a teenage psychology book that has been referenced as a source for the script of this movie, or at least an inspiration, and the psychology book deals with teenage girls and image. So that tells me a lot about what the intention of this movie might be. And if it's not going to be, let's just make a fun Barbie movie, and instead, let's make a movie where we're going to try to indoctrinate and teach and preach, okay, then that's not going to have a very good impact, I think. So, yeah. That film costs about $100 million, though, so that opening weekend will be a huge factor. Blue Beetle, I think it's going to flop. DC has nothing going for it right now. The Glackener, what's going on? Welcome back. Justin on the Red Shirt, who is a member, says, I hear Oppenheimer is a long movie, which doesn't help it in theaters. Well, again, Justin on the Red Shirt, that does depend, right? A long movie does not necessarily guarantee that a film is going to lose money or that it's in trouble necessarily. All right. Talking about runtimes, Dead Reckoning Part 1 is a 2 hour and 43 minute movie. So very, very long film there. Oppenheimer, let's see. Right now, that film, interestingly, Oppenheimer is only listed as a $100 million budgeted movie. So that's actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. So at $100 million, okay. Definitely, I think there are some potentialities there. So my thoughts of that film flopping are not nearly as high, because it would need to make $250 million worldwide, roughly $250 million to $300 million worldwide to break even. And I think it could definitely do that. Again, remember, he has a pretty hardcore fan base, and even a film like Tenet, which costs twice as much to make, unadjusted for inflation in 2020. So again, talking about pandemic times here, in 2020, worldwide, it made $365 million. So something tells me, and the word of mouth on that film was not that great. So I absolutely believe, by the way, for any Catholics out there, Ascension Presents, has just informed me that their app is available. I'm so excited. They're going to have an audio Bible. I know this is very nerdy theology stuff, but I just got the notification for it. I'm so excited. I've been wanting to listen and read the Bible in a year. I've been waiting for the translation that they're using to be available, and now it is. So I can't wait to dive into that after this stream. So anyway, random thought there. But so because of that, again, Tenet made $365 million. The film itself, as far as Oppenheimer is concerned, just needs to make $250 to $300 million to break even based on the budget that's being reported. So I think absolutely it can do it. I really do. Now, I don't have a runtime on Oppenheimer. Nothing's coming up in the quick search on that film. But yeah, I mean, it is going to be interesting. It is going to be interesting to see where these things fall. But again, keep in mind, runtime does not make or break a movie. Whether the film is good or not makes or breaks a movie. Let's see. Big Worm says Cinemark doesn't let you get refills anymore. AMC is way across town. There's a Regal that is our regular, but it's free refill, $65 for tickets. Oh my goodness. Wait, so are you saying that the Regal is more expensive than what the Cinemark would be? I feel like the ticket prices would probably have to be, kind of similar. Obviously with a family, AMC A-list doesn't help all that much, and the Regal, I know that each one has their own subscription plan. There is Movie Pass that you can use at a lot of different theaters. It is back, and it is definitely better than what it had been. It's a little bit more reasonably priced to be able to sustain itself. I'm excited to see what that's going to do in the future. But yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. Obviously, do what works best for you, and just be smart with your popcorn allocation. And yes, I did say popcorn allocation. Henry K. Time to say, how much do you want to bet that a lot of people's first reaction to the Flash movie was baby meme? Oh, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the CGI babies were so abysmal. It was just, I saw your comment earlier. He put a baby in a microwave, and then the microwave dinged, which assumes that the microwave itself is powered. And we already know because he at one point heats up, it looks like he heats up a burrito, and then it dings though with the baby in it. And I'm like, what in the heck is going on? So let's see. Big Worm tried to say, I'll have to see if Regal has IMAX screens, but I don't think it has the tech in the one near us. Yeah, you'll know because it'll have IMAX on the outside of it, because IMAX is very specific. The reason why I like going to IMAX movies more than anything else, and this would go for Dolby, anything where there's a brand, with a big exception being the AMC branded. I think it's AMC branded. It's called the Big D format. Terrible name. But basically the reason why IMAX is great is because IMAX controls it. So let's say you go to see an IMAX movie and you think the sound's too loud. If you go to complain to anyone, I worked at AMC, and whenever people would complain that IMAX was too loud, I would always say, one, it's supposed to be. That's the point of it. Two, we can't touch the sound. The only people that can touch anything as far as the image quality and the sound for an IMAX screen are IMAX technicians. They are very much micromanaging that, which is why it's good, because you're less likely to have a bad theater experience at an IMAX screen. Again, it can't control people, but as far as image quality, sound quality, because it's micromanaged by IMAX, you have a much better guarantee of it being a good film as far as image and audio. Thing Noodle says, part 1, glad there were people like you and WDW Pro and others who cover box office. Mermaid, Flash, Elemental have shown me how much general audiences, normies, and shills have no idea how box office works. Yeah. And also how many of them are no longer going to see these movies too. I mean, you got to keep that into account. Brightburn, a lot of people dislike Iron Man 3, but Iron Man 3 has a post-credit scene that I think Andy was going for, but I'm not going to write his surname. Tony treating Bruce like a shrink was comedic gold. Well, here's the other thing too. I didn't hate Iron Man 3. I know a lot of people did. The twist in Iron Man 3, I didn't mind, but also I'm not a comics guy. So to me, when I had friends that hated the movie because they hated what they did with Mandarin, I'm like, hey, I respect that completely. I think that you're, kudos to you. I think that you absolutely are justified in your reaction. But for me that had no comics experience, all I saw was, oh, that's a fun little twist right there. So again, I could see why people would love that or hate that. Thing Noodles Part 2 says, someone was actually trying to argue with me. Little Mermaid has made over $200 million in profits. I don't blame them, though, with how the media and studios spin the numbers. They do. And also, they're probably reading Collider. I've talked about Collider before. Their box office breakdowns in their articles are trash. They're not even using old metrics. People accuse me of using old metrics, and at least they can admit, no, your metrics used to be correct. The metrics that they use over at Collider are non-existent. They're just completely made up. They make no sense. Let's see. Jonathan the Red Shirt says, given that Hollywood doesn't have a lot of grown-ups left, doesn't look good. No, it doesn't at all for what they're doing. Great Wuda says, Oppenheimer is 3 hours long. Thank you very much for the tag. And wouldn't surprise me. I assume that that's been reported somewhere. Just we don't have an official runtime. So I would not be surprised if the articles we have are saying specifically, they are, that it's roughly over 3 hours long. And to respond to this one, so here's the thing. I disagree. I think IMAX and Dolby are worth it. For someone like me who's a big movie person, I have AMC A-List. So it actually is worth it. $20 a month. I get to see 3 movies a week. I don't go see 3 movies a week, but I at least see 3 movies a month, and it pays for itself. So again, these are things that you have to account for yourself, right? Know thyself, as the philosopher says. And I think it's important for us to have that. But I disagree. I think the quality of IMAX and Dolby, especially Dolby, I haven't seen a Dolby film in a very long time. The theater I worked at in New Orleans had one, and it was great. And anytime there was a movie that had an available showtime in there, I would always want to go into that one, because that one also, at that theater, was the only theater that had reclining seats, which was great. But no, it is great. I mean, keep this in mind too, right? If your average ticket price is around $13 and you're spending closer to $20 for one of these premium format screens, you have to, again, every person's different. You have to ask the question, is the value or is the experience that I'm going to have the most important thing? If just watching the movie is the important thing, then most of you would just say, I'm going to wait for it to come out on streaming. But if the experience itself of watching it, of seeing it in the best possible quality that you possibly can, and guaranteeing that you have a good theater experience as far as visuals and audios go, going with IMAX and going with Dolby is a better way to guarantee that. And again, that speaks more so to why theaters need to do a lot more to improve their overall experience. They have to, at the very least, even if they don't get the reclining seats, even if they don't get all those upgrades, they have to at very least guarantee a fantastic visual and audio experience. If they can't do that, they deserve to go out of business. But I prefer theaters in general to anything, and so that's also why I prefer anything else. I prefer the higher premium format screens. Let's see. Bad News says, what was your grade on No Way Home, and has it changed with more viewings? So I've seen it at least 2 or 3 times. I saw it in theaters once, and then I saw it with my wife. So I think I've seen it twice. I believe I gave it an A-, and I would stick with that. I would stick with that grade. I thoroughly enjoyed it. All right, we're getting close to the end of time, the end of my time at the very least. So we'll go ahead and talk about this. We'll go a little overtime today, but I did want to talk about it because right now the early projections for Barbie. Everyone's so excited for Barbie, right? So Barbie's early projections are $55 to $85 million. You're kind of seeing a theme here, right, with these $100 million films, that a lot of them are getting in the $55 to $80 million range. So for Barbie, I would not be surprised to see it fall in this range. I would not be surprised to even see it do better than this range, personally. The total domestic, as you'll see there, says $120 to $226 million. Now, at a $100 million budget, the film needs to make roughly $250 to $300 million worldwide to break even. A couple of things are going against this movie, though. One, it's a Warner Brothers movie. As we all know, Warner Brothers has had terrible luck with movies. Pretty much, I can't think of one off the top of my head. Over the last few years, all of their major big budgeted movies have been box office flops. Or if they have made money, have made nothing to make that much of a difference. So that's already a big factor going against it, right? Is Warner Brothers is behind it, and they've just not been effective in getting their films to make money or to do well really at all. The other major factor that's a problem for this movie is that it's directed by Greta Gerwig. Greta Gerwig did the 2019 edition of Little Women, which did pretty well, actually, at the box office, had very strong holds, had very long legs. Those Little Women did, of course. And it was, again, some people really liked it. She also did Lady Bird, which got a lot of Oscars attention, but as a regular person, it was kind of abysmal and it was kind of annoying. She's also been in a lot of indie films with Noah Baumbach, who helped co-write the screenplay for Barbie. And he is mostly known for doing these random indie films, and many of them happen to have starred Greta Gerwig, who in those movies plays the same exact role every single time and is really, really annoying. So that's the person that's directing this movie. I have no confidence in it for that very reason itself. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier today, but here's the problem also. The script says in the overall, in the actual explanation going on for this movie, let me go ahead and see if I can pull this up real quick so that way y'all can see what I'm talking about. In the actual discussion, No, not the Barbie doll. Come on, people. I'm looking for the movie. Let me go ahead and put 2023 in. Let's see if that will help find it. Because this, I think, is going to be the biggest problem for it. Look at what it says here on written, right? Oh, wait a minute. They took it out. They took it out. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I wonder if they took it out after I covered. No, I doubt it. I'm not that big. But on this, based on Barbie by Mattel, there used to be a reference to a teenage psychology book. Let me see if maybe they mention it here. Yes, here it is. For the narrative arc, so notice they took it out of the top, but it's still here. For the narrative arc, she was partially inspired by the 1994 nonfiction book Reviving Ophelia. What does this say? Saving the Cells of Adolescent Girls. The book takes a look at the effects of societal pressures on American adolescent girls and utilizes many case studies. So it went from actually being a part of the writing process to now it's just partially inspired. It's also interesting here. It says, Gerwig had originally written an abstract poem on Barbie in the vein of the Apostles' Creed. So the inspiration is not only the toy, but also apparently an abstract poem that is somehow based upon and similar to the Apostles' Creed, and also inspired by a 1994, again, Reviving Ophelia, which is all about self-image in teenage girls. What could they possibly do with a film about Barbie and self-image? Wait, it's not going to be a story about Barbie that's fun? It's going to... Wait a minute. I can see now why I think this movie probably won't have a good second weekend. We'll have to wait and see. We don't know the movie yet. Maybe this is just what Greta Gerwig is saying. Maybe this is just what they're putting out there, trying to get some of their woke friends to go see them. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, though. Either way, it's, let's just say, I don't think it's got a lot of potential there. Oppenheimer, though, I do think has a lot more potential than what they're giving it, all right? They're right now saying $40 to $55 million. I think it's going to make a little bit more than that. I really do, because the trailers have been very, very effective. Nolan does have a draw. Again, it's not a guaranteed draw, but the fact in 2020 that a movie called Tenet, which was also a very long movie and also did not get really great word of mouth, that movie was still able to make over $300 million. And that was in the midst of everything essentially being closed, right, in the heart of 2020. So I'm looking at these numbers and thinking to myself, okay, I personally would not be surprised if this film does better. Now, some might say, well, it's up against Barbie, but to me, those are two very different audiences. So I think that you're looking at your number one and number two movie. Could Barbie beat Oppenheimer? I think absolutely it could. But what I honestly think is going to happen would be Oppenheimer does better than expected. Barbie probably does about what is being said there. And, oh man, box office is going to get very, very interesting very, very quickly. And as just a bit of an update on The Flash, as I do have some movie comparisons here to mention, since some people might be wondering. So I have The Flash up against Black Adam, Guardians 3, and Shazam. So you've got two DCEU movies, and their comparable numbers here. So just as a bit of a comparison. So Flash right now is at $210 million worldwide. Black Adam, $391 was its end total. $826 right now is Guardians, $132 for Shazam. So the movie has already done better than Shazam. So at least it's got that going for it. But it also costs $75 million more than Shazam. So will it do enough higher than Shazam to actually end up being that much more of a success? I don't know. Personally, I don't think so, especially since that $200 million is probably actually a lot higher. But what's interesting is these daily numbers, because right now this film is tracking well below Black Adam. Look at this second Sunday number. 8 million to 4, 11 million to 6, 7 to 4. So, it's almost tracking at this point about 50% behind as far as the daily numbers are concerned. In the overall totals, not as much, right? Maybe 20, 25% behind. But let's say that holds out. 20, 25% below 391 million. You see a movie that actually potentially could struggle to hit 300. Could barely get over $300 million worldwide. And if that happens, oh boy, that's going to be bad. And then on the side of Elemental, just to give a frame of reference here, so yes, it's not doing as bad as Strange World numbers, right? Strange World at the same point of release had a $25 million, but a couple of factors here. This was Disney Animated Studios, not Disney Pixar. And the other Pixar film of Lightyear was at $89 million at this point in the release, whereas Elemental's at 65 domestic. Okay, look at how much it's tracking behind, all right? Same point of release, 65 versus 89. So about 90 to 60 there. Okay, now you're talking about a movie that might struggle to even hit $200 million. And for a movie that costs $200 million, meaning its break even is roughly $500 million, oh boy. That's why I think Elemental could potentially be a bigger box office flop than The Flash, depending on what budget you believe and what numbers you are actually using in general. All right, we'll get to these last comments as quickly as we possibly can. Ms. Martin Muses, thanks for being here. Paul Fisher, thanks for being here as well. Think Noodles, did you see the Flash director say there's a 4-hour cut and more deleted scenes? I believe that is where a lot of the budget is going for these movies. This and Thor for wasting money. No, I don't think that's actually, no, it's because the reason why it costs so much is because they had a lot of reshoots, because they went through so many different directors, and because it's just been a giant mess. So it's not because of them having these longer films or having extra footage. Every film has extra footage, right? Every film, when you buy a Blu-ray, what do you have? At least 30 minutes of extra footage. And there's probably even more. It's just stuff that they don't want to actually put onto a physical media because they don't think it's good enough or whatever it might be. So, says directors, producers are very disorganized. Oh, for sure. They absolutely are. Brightburn, I think I've heard complaints about Christopher Nolan losing the humanity in his filmmaking. Basically, people have said Nolan is becoming too much like Stanley Kubrick. Could be. I think that Tenet was definitely way too heady for a lot of people, but I'm hoping Oppenheimer does a little bit better. Neoside Cyclops, end times? Don't scare us like that. Yeah, apologies. Twikey Kid says, not sure if watching a train wreck crashing into a dumpster fire like The Flash would be enhanced by IMAX. Oh, you'd be surprised. Let's see. Big Worm says, any word on why the R rating on Oppenheimer? Any sexy time, it's no-go for kids, preteen. For my son is huge engineering. I really want to take the family. I have not heard anything necessarily, but it looks like just under the red shirt got your back there. It says, IMDb says it's for some sexuality, nudity, and language. So I will definitely reference that in my review when I go to see it. But my guess would be, if it says some sexuality, that it's not anything like hardcore. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the nudity is when they are preparing for the bomb, to put on like cream, like the stuff to protect them from the radiation. I would imagine it's something like that. I feel like Nolan would be a lot more tasteful with that kind of stuff. Victor Fontaine, what's going on? Akuris, what's going on? Let's see. Bad New over on Rumble says, that seems high on No Way Home, but if that's an A-, what would be an A+? In general, go to my website, ombreviews.com. I've got movie reviews dating back to 2011, and that will give you a frame of reference of what I view as an A+ movie, what I view as an A movie, and then also confirming what I gave to No Way Home. I don't have any up-to-date numbers there, but anyway, if you're interested in that, you can do that. Anyway, with all that being said, I am, again, a little bit over time today, so thank you, everyone who joined today. Actually, hold on, let me make sure, because this thing sometimes jumps ahead. All right, good. Got everything there. So anyway, you should already have gotten a notification that that the Geeks and Gamers Daily Stream has already started or should be starting soon. So go check them out if you have not done so already. They'll be doing a fuller explanation, I'm sure, about The Flash. Also, my box office breakdown for Geeks and Gamers should be up at some point. I hope. I don't know exactly when, but it was filmed and it was sent last night. Not too late. So hopefully it goes live soon, but go support it over there. Make sure you support Geeks and Gamers as well. And if you've not seen my box office breakdown on this channel, go ahead and check that. Yeah, the hour honestly does go quickly, Nick Braun. It goes very, very quickly. But tomorrow, we will have our OMB Report live stream. That's on my second channel, the OMB Report, where we talk about news and politics. And I'm sure I'll also do a further dive into the Ascension Presents app. So again, for anyone who's Catholic or interested in Bible studies or anything like that, Ascension Presents, Ascension Press is a really, really good resource. And they have an app now that has a lot of really exciting features that I want to try out. So I'm going to jump into that And hopefully it's very good. So I'll probably have some words on that tomorrow, since that's a lot more appropriate for the OMB Report live stream. So anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my June Patreon, Subscribe Star, and Locals members at the Keeper, the Bifrost level and above. Starting off first with Patreon, Father Luca Illich, Jaimir Irie Hymason, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Hat Reviews, you can check it over at his YouTube channel, Orange Hat Reviews, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Rosetta Allen, who you can check out at her YouTube channel of Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, who you can check out at her YouTube channel by the same name as well. Also to my Subscribe Star peeps, Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man, who you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my Locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, and Robert Barnes, the amazing lawyer. And again, thank you all very much for being my supporters. If you want your name shout out at the end of every live stream and every video, check out the top link in the video description below. You also can get access to things like a giveaways channel where I give away Blu-rays, 4K steelbooks, all kinds of stuff every single, most weeks in the month. I try to give away something, or at the very least towards the end of the month, I will make it up with several giveaways. Basically, most people are guaranteed to walk away with something at the end of every single month. So if you want access to that, again, check out the top link in the video description below, as well as access to an exclusive podcast. This past month, I was actually able to record a great podcast with Michelle from Force of Light Entertainment. So if you want access to that and also a plethora of other content, check out the link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.